What's going on, guys and girls? How are you doing today? It's Singer Roleplay once again, and today I want to finally present you the Arc Trap Lightning Spire build that I had in the works for a long time. And first of all, I would like to tell you why it took so much time to finally create this and finalize this build. First of all, I started playing Arc Traps long before everyone else. I actually had this build done in the Harbinger League, where I played both the Trapper and the Miner, and overall everything was fine. Level up with Fire Trap, then Ice Trap, then a Lightning Trap, then switch to the Arc Trap, and as a mapping build it was absolutely fine. There was no Shaper or Elder items or anything else, just a normal trap support and Arc and everything in Tinker Skin, and that's about it. But as a mapping it was okay. I cleared everything up into the red maps, but single target was complete shit, and bossing was a giant amount of pain. Literally, it took like several minutes to kill the boss, even on in the Shape Dunes and maps such as this, kind of an easy maps. So the only reason why I did not create the build in a Harbinger is because bossing was absolutely terrible, and when you can't really do all the content in the game, I feel like the build is not worth it, because even with the crappy skills, I like to optimize everything and try everything into the end game, like the shapers and stuff. And if I can't really kill all the end game with the skill that I'm playing, then it's basically not really worth it. I don't really create the mapping builds or the bossing builds. I just create all around solid builds. So there was no single target, and I've been just waiting for some kind of rework. And the first rework happened in a couple of patches ago. I think it was in the best or even before, when the Ascendancy has been reworked for the Saboteur, and it was like a first glimpse of hope where I saw that it's kind of turning into the correct direction. We got more recovery, and it was easier to survive shit from now on, but the damage was still not there, and I was still waiting for the damage kind of to be ramped up, for something to be done on the Arc, on the traps, and in general. And 3.3 is when everything became so much better, guys, and this is where the damage buffs happen. In 3.3 a lot of dramatic changes happened to both the Saboteur of the Arc and the Trap as well in general. First of all, Trap support now has no cooldown, and as a base you also can throw 15 traps instead of 3 traps, and that raised the amount of traps from around 12 when I had in the Harbinger to 23 when I can throw in the Incursion League. This is literally doubled the amount of traps that I had on the screen. At the same time, the Arc damage has been greatly increased, as well as Arc now gains 15% more damage per remaining chain, and with 7 chains that means that we have around 100% increased damage for bosses, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's basically double the damage against bosses. And trap cooldown also has no trap support also has no cooldown now in the Incursion. That means basically we can spam all these traps, all these spells, all these fire traps and lightning trap. It also has no cooldown now. We also got the fat traps with 8-second cooldown and 3 charges, like the Lightning Spire trap. And this is why I realized that finally the time has come to reinvent the build, to kind of scratch the dust off, and finally the single target damage has arrived, which I've been waiting for over 3 leagues, and now I can finally play the build as it should be, enjoy the build, and now this is finally the end game viable build ready to play. This is what I'm gonna show you guys, and let's start with the pros and the cons of the build as usual. The pro of the build is definitely the damage. Is absolutely absurd, and I fear that the nerf might come in the upcoming patch, because if you throw 23 traps at a time, and this is just the Arc itself, is also the Lightning Spire that does twice more damage than the buff than the buffed Arc to single target. This is absolutely crazy. So that's a lot of damage, and both the mapping and the bossing is absolutely amazing with the Arc traps right now. So most bosses basically melt in under a second, even in the highest tiers like 16s or 15s, doesn't matter, everything just fucking evaporates. And it was absolutely the fastest Shaper kill I've ever had in the history of me playing Path of Exile. Literally, Shaper lost half of life in like a couple of seconds when I've set up all my traps in front of them. He just lost literally half of life. This is absolutely crazy. For the cons of the build, I would say that the mobility could be better. Since we are basically the wind users, as usual, we have to stick with the fucking Flame Dash and Quicksilver, but this is not the fastest build in the universe. You can also use Shield Charge, and most people, on especially on Hardcore, use Shield Charge with the nice shield. It should give you an extra stats. This is a safer option, it's pretty nice. But mobility still could be much better. There's no attack speed there involved in the build, and it's pretty shitty. The toughness is also pretty damn problematical, I would say, because this build is very hard to go over 5,000 life, and it's still pretty damn squishy. It's just fucking sketchy. I mean, if there are fast snakes or some shit like this, or heavy hitters, like if something hits you, you might just fucking die because there's no, physical damage reduction, there's no high evasion, there's just dodge on the phase acrobatics and all kind of acrobatic shit. But aside from these acrobatics, you basically just fucking glass cannon with a giant amount of damage, and if you get hit, you might potentially rip. So mobility and this sketchy low life pool is kind of the only con of the build I didn't think about it. Otherwise from that, it's pretty damn good. It's a solid mapping experience, and the bossing damage is absolutely absurd. It's also pretty safe against most bosses because, you're not in a close range, just throw traps, and bosses trigger these traps and they basically just die, like in this video. Let's take a look at path building, guys. I prepared the leveling trees for you. You can see them here. When you click this, that will let you know exactly where you should go for the next tree as you level up. So we'll start with a very early leveling tree, and the first thing you need to get is this trap and mine damage, basically life. Then take the Saboteur and Expeditious Munitions as soon as possible, and the first thing we need to reach is to this fat Saboteur will get Clever Construction, Devastating Devices, as well as High Explosive. Then transition down there, get the Fat Life Wheel, and get the Master Sapper, which will allow you to gain Frenzy Charges when your trap is triggered by the enemy. The other thing that we need to grab as fast as possible is Blast Cascade, because it will allow you to gain Power Charges, and by the level around 31, you will have both Frenzy and Power Charge generation, easy peasy. Yeah, level 31. As to 41, you will start stacking into more crit. This is where you will be using some Axioms, Perpetuum and stuff, and you have basically transition to Annihilation and Fraud Seeker. By around level 49, we'll be getting more life here as well as getting the Heart and Soul. 48, yeah, 49, the 70, 78, this is where we'll branch out and actually get all life as possible. This is where we'll be mapping already heavily. So we need a much more life for mapping. This will branch out you to the Discipline and Training, as well as to the Herbalism and everything. Every node is possible. Also get Doom Cast here, don't forget this one. This is very mandatory for any crit based character. So yeah, and the very last one will be actually this. We'll be getting our Shimmerons, hopefully. This is level 90 something, and we will be speccing into the Jewels, as well as getting this spell damage per power charge, as well as getting all these power charges ready. And the very last one that I personally spec in is Crackling Speed, because it gives us crit multiply, increased effective shock, cast speed for the Lightning Spire, as well as increased lightning damage. This is just incredibly good. For the items, I will go over them in detail in the endgame section, but this is a pretty optimized setup that I use, and you can see the damage here on the left. This damage is for single target because this assumes that none of the chains happened, but if we kind of remove the amounts of chains, where is it? Where is it? Yeah, so basically when we remove the amount of change, a number of times he'll have changed, the damage goes down, because this is basically the mapping damage that we have. And maximum we have 7 chains, so this is basically the mapping damage. The single target damage is this. This is pretty ridiculous on the arc. We also use power charges and frenzy charges all the time, so this will be ticked as well. So for the items, the very end game, GG, absolutely crazy events are Shimmerons. I know they are expensive, but when you get these power charges up and running, you will get 100 crit multiplier with 2 dual wielding Shimmerons, and this is the absolutely beast items for the damage. You can also spec with the shield. Like I said, a lot of people for the hardcore, they use shields there. It's actually a very good, solid, safe option. But for the softcore, I strongly recommend dual wielding Shimmerons, because this is just GG for damage. For the helmet, is basically any helmet with the arc enchants, and there are 2 good arc enchants. One is the 40% increased arc damage, and another is arc chains an additional time, which is just even slightly over this enchant. But any of these are absolutely good. Just any helm with high life and high resist. For the body armor, there are 2 very solid options. Tinker Skin, which is Sadist Garb unique. Tinker Skin is like quality of life and a better recovery as well. It has life on them, increased cooldown and recovery speed for throwing traps, which is pretty insane for the Lightning Spire, because it's a fat 8-second trap. And it also gives you phasing, chance to gain frenzy charges on top of Master Sapper, and it's 30% chance to get frenzy charge when your trap is triggered. At the same time, it gives you recovery of 100 life when your trap is triggered by an enemy, and 50% and 50 energy shield when your trap is triggered. So basically, it recovers your energy shield and life whenever your trap is triggered. If you pair this with the Eldritch Battery, you're basically casting traps for free using your energy shield, and your recovery energy shield when you cast it. So basically you are casting traps for free, and this gives you another options, like you can branch out to the Mind Over Matter. You can stack much more mana and reserve all your mana and just cast everything on the Eldritch Battery. This is a very, very interesting option, and basically this can save you a lot of pain in the ass. Another cool option that I can use, especially for Soul Self-Found, is the Lore with Elegant Ringmail. This is just an all-round great fucking chest. It also comes with 6 sockets originally. You need to trade like what, 60 or 80 unique rings for this, but for Soul Self-Found this is absolutely doable, and it's just not very likely that you will get Tinker Skin for Soul Self-Found, but Lore Weave is like the best option. It also gives you a lot of crit chance for spells, a lot of elemental damage, some life, mana, and everything else, as well as it boosts your maximum resistance by up to 80%, which allows you to run maps which lower your maximum resistance. Overall, Lore Weave is a fantastic option along with the Tinker Skin as well. The gloves are basically the key item that we utilize for this build, and these are the Shaper gloves, which are supported by level 20 trap, from level like 18 to 22 trap, as well as it also has the mod, which is a Shaper mod with skills which throw traps, throw up to 1 additional trap. We use it in a 4 link, which becomes an effective 5 link with the arc here. His sits our arc, and it becomes an effective 5 link. And the first thing you will possibly ask me, why arc in a 5 link and lightning spire in the 6 link? Well, for a couple of reasons. Arc is kind of, crazy damage on its own. We throw it infinitely, and a lightning spire is just a fat trap which we set up on the boss specifically, so it better be just do a lot of damage as much as possible in the period while it's still up. So I think that Lightning Spire is more intense when it sits on a 6 link. We also save 1 skill gem, which is the trap support, because it has trap on the gloves, and if we use like for example arc and a 6 link, we're basically wasting one skill on the trap support, which I believe is not really that good. So arc on a shaper 5 link and lightning spire on a full 6 link. This is it. Like I said, skill which throw traps throw up to 1 additional trap, and this effectively increases all out damage by around 20%, simply because instead of 4 traps with cluster trap support, we throw 5 traps at once, and basically we just do like 20% more damage with every time we throw this bunch of traps. This is very strong. Boots are basically just life resist, move speed, and this enchant is very strong. A 120% increased critical strike chance if you haven't crit recently. Since we never really have critting recently because we do not really crit at all, this shit is up all the time, and this is the global critical strike chance, which is basically crazy for damage. The amulet are 2 possible options here. One is some crazy spell damage as well as global crit multiplier and cast speed and life and resist amulet. And another cool option is basically the Choir of the Storm, because it increases our critical chance by the lightning resistance. It gives us crazy amount of lightning damage as well. Unfortunately, this comes with no life, but if we use this, our damage will be pretty similar to what we use with the classic, you know, DPS amulet. The rings are basically life and resist, nothing crazy here. Basically just fat rings with life and resist. Another cool combination that is just GG for absolute damage is the Mark of the Shaper ring with another Elder ring here, like this for example. This dramatically boosts our damage, like around 10% more damage, I assume, on top of everything else. If you have this and if you still can balance out your resist, then use this for sure. For the belt, is no-brainer, staging wise is the best. It can give you life resist as well as another socket which you can use for the Abyssal Jewel, and Abyssal Jewels are mostly lightning damage to spells as well as global crit multiply and life on top of life and global crit. That's all you need. For the flasks, I go to the flask section. I will skip this for now. As for the normal jewels, it's basically just lightning damage, life, and all kind of additive spell damage, as well as global crit multiplier, of course. For the bandits, I'll strongly recommend to go Alira, because she will give you mana regen, crit multiply, as well as resist, and this is all good. Passives, if you wish, kill them all if you wish, but Alira I think is mandatory for any crit based spell build out there. For the ascendancy, of course, we go with the Saboteur ascendancy, and the first thing that you should take is obviously the Pyromanic. That will give you much more recovery through the whole fucking game. This is your first lab with the Pyromanic. The second and the third one is basically Perfect Crime and a Chain Reaction. And the last one for the Uber lab is Explosive Expert, and this is for softcore. What would I recommend personally? For the hardcore, I would go with Born in the Shadows, as this basically gives you another layer of sustain, another layer of survival ability. And nearby enemies are blinded, and you have a high chance to blind enemies on hit, and blind enemies also increase damage from hits and ailments with traps as well. So this is an all-around good choice. Among two of this, I prefer Explosive Expert because it's kind of an instant damage, while this requires you to be kind of nearby the enemies. So for hardcore, Born in the Shadow. For softcore, Explosive Expert, no doubt. For the very early leveling, I strongly recommend to use this setup. This is pretty standard for any kind of spellcaster. Doesn't matter if you're using traps, mines, or whatever. This is basically Wanderlust, Gold Rim, Nocturnal Caress, Double Life Sprigs, and Tabula Rasa. If you don't have Tabula Rasa, it doesn't matter, because you can just use any chest. You don't really need 6 link to be super effective early on with traps. But these items will make your life a lot easier. At level 4, you can get the stuff called the Fan Coil, which then can be later upgraded to this stuff called the Mirebore, which is level 32 requirement, and it is an effective 6 link trap which is absolutely ridiculous. So basically at level 32 you can potentially get a 6 link for your trap, which is pretty crazy. Originally you start with the explosive trap, which you can get at level 1. You put this explosive trap into anything and just start fucking exploding. When you get trap support, use this trap support. At level 12 you get your first arc, and you start use arc with trap support, and basically added lightning or whatever you want in a free link, as well as you get trap and mine damage, put trap and mine damage there, and drop explosive trap entirely because you don't really need it. At level 28 you will get your lightning spire and put this lightning spire in another 4 link. And at level 22 you can also get this Deerstalker boots, which will give you an effective 5 link as well, which is absolutely insane. It will give you boost speed, move speed as well. So basically I have the full leveling up guide written on the Path of Exile forums, and check it out for the leveling section, guys. You will have everything explained over there in detail. For the endgame skills and options, guys, let me give you a brief summary of what you should be using in the very endgame. Like I said, 2 Shimmerons, absolute beasts. If you use power charges, Shaper Glass with an extra trap and level 20 to 22 trap support is absolutely best. For chest, Tinker Skin or Lore Reef are the best option. The health doesn't really matter. All that matters is the Eternal Lab enchant, which should be arc damage or arc change in additional time. The amulet is obviously the global crit, life, spell damage amulet, or the Chair of the Storm. The rings are the Mark of the Shaper and the Elder Ring with a lot of life and resist, as well as any kind of rings with the life and resist. The boots should just have this enchant and a lot of life and resist. The belt is Chichen Vice with life, lightning damage to spell jewels on them. For the links, we'll be using Lightning Spy Trap on the 6th link and the chest, Lightning Spy Trap, Kong Effect, Lightning Penetration because this is very good for bosses, Aided Lightning Damage Support, Trap and Mine Damage Support, and Control Destruction. This is it. This is the GG links for the single target Lightning Spire. For the Shaper Glass, we'll be using, of course, Arc with Elemental Focus, Trap and Mine Damage Support, and Cluster Trap Support, which allows us to throw 5 traps at a time with a single throw with these gloves. This is basically it. Why no Lightning Penetration here and Elemental Focus? Because it doesn't really matter. I mean, everything should just die in a matter of under a second in your 5-link Shaper Gloves, so you don't really need Lightning Penetration. Lightning Penetration, please leave it for the Lightning Spire. This is where it matters the most. It will lay this trap down, and then it's kind of started walking on the bosses. See, here you will see it triggering right now. This is where Lightning Penetration is much more important. For the boots, this is basically our Aura's Conductivity with Wrath, Blasphemy support, and Lightning support. On the right hand, I have his cast when damage taken with Immortal Call and Freeze Run. This is another mobility in Immortal Call here. On the helm, we have another utility with Enduring Cry, Summon Flame Golem, which increases all our damage, as well as Bad Trap. I mean, Bad Trap is not really that mandatory, it's not that life-changing, but it's just good to have. You throw it under the boss, it just gets slows down insanely, and this can be actually pretty useful against some very fast bosses, so it's good to have. On the left hand, we have Arcane Search with faster casting and Flame Dash. This is just additional boost of damage during the mapping. Arcane Search should be low level. That's about it, guys. If you don't have the Shimmeron, then try to buy some really crazy van. Vans are not very expensive, but this one that I have is pretty insane. But you know, it's not that hard to get comparing to the Shimmerons, because Shimmerons are just expensive. You need to get a good Shimmeron with a lot of crit there. But a good van will be pretty close to what Shimmeron can do, especially outside of power charges at around 80 to 85, when you'll be now power charges for you. Shimmerons are insane, but a good van is also a van, and it's very strong as well. For the flasks, I strongly recommend this setup, guys, but this is of course all optional. You can have your personal choices. So the first flask that I have is a Serious Promise, gives me elemental damage as extra chaos damage. This is just pure damage flask. The second one is Quicksilver with increased movement speed and additional resist. The third one is the Diamond Flask. It gives me critical strike chance and it has bleeding on it. The fourth is an option of options. It can be anything. I personally use Quartz Flask on top of my Acrobatics passive, which gives me another 10% chance to dodge attacks and spells, which result gives me around 40% chance to dodge, which is basically all that I have as my way to avoid damage. Here instead you can use also the Basalt Flask for physical damage reduction, as well as Sulfur for just additional damage. This is also nice. And obviously the last is the Life Flask, because we are a life build. That's about it for the flasks. For the pendant powers, I strongly recommend the Soul of Aracali, because this boosts our recovery on top of the Pyromanic passive that we have on the Saboteur Ascendancy. This is basically a lot of recovery for our life. And I do not recommend anything else outside of it. For the minor gods, however, I personally use Solar Frustrata because it gives me kind of another layer of defense in a really shitty situation. You get a life flask. It's exceptionally good when you run around some nasty bosses and it takes a while. You get a hit, then you get your life flask back and you press this and you are back. So this is just another layer of safety for me. But there are another good cool options like the Soul of Gerukhan, also very good. 6% increased move speed if you haven't been hit recently. This is amazing. And a Soul of Relicash I think is another good option, because reduced physical damage over time, damage taken while moving, is pretty damn good as well. It will help you. Now, is this build hardcore viable or not, guys? Let me tell you that it is hardcore viable, but it is incredibly sketchy because there are many heavy hitters out there, and if you get hit you may potentially die because there's no physical damage reduction. There's no very high evasion because we are not really there running with a bow or stacking ridiculous amount of dexterity and shit and evasion and shit. So basically we are pretty much glass cannon with around 5,000 life and acrobatics on us. It doesn't mean that we basically can die from anything, but we can die, and if there's an extra damage mods like an extra elemental damage on the map, we potentially can actually die. And I do not personally recommend this for hardcore, but I know that there's a lot of players who have a lot of fun with this build on hardcore. And this is a pretty relatively safe build because it's mostly ranged, but at the same time it's a bit of a sketchy because running on such a low life pool is always sketchy. So it's up to you to decide personally if you're going to run this on hardcore or not. Leveling might be pretty easy, but in the end game, when you stack all these mods on the maps and all that shit, it can be a little sketchy to play. Now let's talk about the actual build effectiveness and go to the conclusion, guys. Now for the clear speed, I would personally give it as 3 out of 5 because it's flame dash build and kind of the mobility is pretty shit, and as a spellcaster you always go with a Quicksilver, phase run, phasing, and basically as much move speed on the boots as possible. So the clear speed could be better if there was some kind of mobility, and people with the shield charge actually have better mobility, I guess, but the attack speed is still pretty shit. So it's not your attack build. So attack speed is low, shield charge is low, Quicksilver uptime is low. We're not pathfinders and shit. So clear speed is 3 out of 5 at best. For the boss power, I would give it easily 5 out of 5, and we'll see why. Because Shaper will just lose like most of these hit points in under a fucking couple of seconds. You just guys take a look at this. So look at this health. You see how the fuck it drops. That's basically it. So if I could give 6 out of 5, I would give it 6, but this is 5 out of 5. The boss damage is absolutely ridiculous. The AoE power is like easily 5 out of 5 because the chaining effect of Arc, and it has one of the highest amount of chains in the game, so 5 out of 5 for the AoE. Clear area of everything. You basically throw 5 traps and they do everything. You don't even need to throw more of them. One bunch of traps clear screens away. That's why the AoE power is very, very good. For the toughness, I would give it 3 out of 5. The build is not entirely squishy. You know, there's still 5,000 life, you know, it's not 4,000 build. There's still, it can be used with Mind Over Matter and shit and can be more tougher, but it's still pretty damn sketchy. What I really like to say, it is sketchy build. It's not squishy, it's sketchy build. Eventually you may find this monster which can actually one-shot you, or some kind of fast mobs which approach you and just hit you all at once and you die. So while not being a squishy build, it still has, you know, phase acrobatics and all kind of 40% dodge that I have, but this is still pretty damn sketchy. So it's not for this your tanky build with instant leech or a dramatic amount of regen or whatever it has. It has crazy amount of regen, but the life pool is not very high, and eventually some heavy hitters can hit you through their life pool as well. So this is it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the build and the video. Make sure to subscribe for my videos, and see you in the next vid as well. Thank you very much. See you soon.